I got to do some training with the top 200 leaders in the U.S. Army, and he came up to me after and he goes, Zach, a lot of people think that the key ingredient of a high-performing unit behind enemy lines is toughness. And he said, it's not. It's love. No one is going to sacrifice for me if I don't know their kids' names. It's hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't believe that they matter. And psychologically, if someone doesn't believe that they matter in the place where they spend a third of their waking life, they can start to feel like, I don't matter. What I'm doing doesn't matter.
I mentioned earlier, we get busier than ever all the time, and some of us are navigating our own personal challenges, whatever it might be. How do we remember to slow down and to really pay attention to others?
Hurry and care cannot coexist. It's easy to say we care about people, but there's a difference between caring about somebody and caring for them.
A phrase that I love, the 5 most powerful words. Can you tell us what those words are and what that phrase is, why it's so necessary, so effective?
Making sure people feel that they need it is making sure they know they're not dispensable and that their work is not disposable. When people feel replaceable, they act it, but when people feel irreplaceable, they act it. They act it. They act it.
My very special guest is a researcher, author, and speaker specializing in purposeful leadership, mattering, meaningful work, and positive organizational psychology. His clients include teams at the U.S. Army, Delta Airlines, Marriott International, and the National Park Service, to name a few. And his newest book is The Power of Mattering, How Leaders Can Create a Culture of Significance, and it's published through Harvard Business Review Press. He is Zach Mercurio. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thanks, Matt. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm really glad you're here because we need you. We need this book in our organizations for sure. And part of the reason why you start with some really sobering statistics when you opened up the book, talking about 58% of people feeling lonely, nearly 50% of people feeling forgotten, and 30% feeling invisible. And then you hit us with this stinger. We can't have healthy organizations with unhealthy people. So I wonder if, just to set the frame for us, can you tell us a little bit, Zach, about this relationship between our work and our mental health?
Well, we spend almost a third of our waking lives in work, and how we make meaning in work affects how we make meaning in life, whether or not we want to believe that or not. And one of the ways that we make meaning in work is through the interactions we have every day. And work is relationships. And that's why leadership is relationships. And for a leader, what you reflect back to somebody about who they are, their worth, their capability in your interactions can have a major effect on how they see themselves, and how they see themselves usually affects how they act. And so that's why you see things like the link between a manager and a manager caring for their people and people's mental health. I mean, there's been studies, I'm sure you've seen them, that shows a leader can be almost as much responsible for someone's overall health than their doctor or their therapist or other people in their lives. And why is that? It's because leaders architects the interactions in which people make meaning of their lives through work.
It's so amazing, and we don't really think about it in those terms, but I love how you're framing that. It is about the interactions, and the interactions are taking place within the context of performance, to be honest, whether we're hitting the numbers, is the project going to be on budget and on time? So there's all these ancillary layers, but as the relationship goes, the interactions go, as you say, that's going to have the biggest impact, I think, on how I absorb and my resulting mental health, all things being equal.
Absolutely. There are 2 beliefs that motivate productivity and performance. Actually, 2 human beliefs that motivate any human behavior. We have to believe that we're worthy to act. It's called self-esteem. And we have to believe that we're capable. Research is very clear that when people have these beliefs about themselves in work, they're more productive, they perform better. I think it's very important to see, and I like how you say ancillary effects, because performance and productivity, those are lagging indicators. They're always lagging indicators of human energy. And some of the best leaders I've worked with are able to see that the human energy is the leading indicator. And those 2 beliefs, I'm worthy and I'm capable, are so important for fostering the confidence needed to add value. When people feel valued, they add value. And where do they get those things? Well, if we look at the predictors of self-esteem and self-efficacy, there's 2 predictors: supportive relationships and verbal reinforcement. So our environment has to show us the evidence that we're worthy and the evidence that we're capable for us to believe those things, to have the confidence needed to go add value. A big big chunk of how we've developed leaders and organizations has used this ethos of people should be valued once they add value, even if we don't say it. Like, people should be promoted, we should give people more money, we should give people these symbols of value once they add value. But psychologically, the opposite is actually true. People need to feel valued to add value.
It's amazing to think about, like, that in that way, the relationship becomes an input, or at least in it's saying if you want to get those rewards, that sort of that confirmation, that sort of Pygmalion effect, so to speak, where it's like if you think people are going to be successful and you treat them as if they're going to be successful, they're more likely to be successful. And what I'm hearing is almost this. At first, as you were describing, I was thinking, well, it's kind of like I'm holding up a mirror and I'm reflecting back to you because I need you to see what I'm seeing. But it's also more active than that, because you're saying, like, verbally, I have to give you the cues that you are meaningful and that you are significant and valued in this context. So it's not totally passive, but it also has an active component too.
Oh, it's active and it's skillful. So these are skills that we can learn that we never really formally learn. The skills to show people the evidence of their significance. I mean, some of the best leaders we've studied, they show people the indisputable evidence of their significance. You know, an example that I have of that is I was working with the National Park Service, as you mentioned, and I worked with a manager who had really high morale in his park. He manages all the facilities management workers. High turnover, high churn, difficult, invisible, everyday work in really inhospitable conditions, managing bathrooms, repairing bridges, difficult work. And he had one practice that contributed to his high morale. He would go around and take pictures of the work that they did, and visitors using a bridge or a shorter line for a bathroom because one was repaired. And he had this one practice on Friday. He would just send an email that said, "Look what you did." And he would send them the pictures.
Wow.
What I love about that is that's a skill, but it takes place in even a virtual interaction where you're showing somebody the evidence of their significance. It's very difficult for that facilities maintenance worker to say, my work doesn't really matter, because it's right there. And that's what I mean by skillfully. It's skillful and it's active, and we can do it through everyday interactions and really in the small micro moments of our days with people. We can give them the evidence that reinforces these beliefs that I'm worthy and I'm capable, the belief that I matter.
Yeah. And I think it's so true for so many of us when life comes at you so fast and it's so busy, you kind of lose awareness. We kind of have this sleepwalking tendency when it comes to being at work. And so you forget that the work that you do, actually, there are people, there are customers, there are, people, park visitors in that case, who are benefiting from your work. And you're just kind of like, you go home and you're thinking, did I do anything today? Like, does what I do matter? I feel like all the negative, that's easy. I can point to those things when it was hot and, somebody may have had an unartful interaction with somebody, but all the good stuff, I love that this person was able to say, like, you can't escape it. You all did these things. That's so cool.
Yeah. And, I think that that's really important with what we're talking about. It can be so easy to fall prey to what's called automaticity, which is like, your brain doesn't put much effort into like brushing your teeth or driving to work or, hopping on a Zoom call. And that's good for those tasks because you don't want to devote energy to it. The problem is when we become automatic with people. Every one-on-one starts the same. Every small little performance conversation is routine, and your brain can fall into these routines. And the problem is that it subtly dehumanizes the next person we're interacting with as just part of the routine. But what you said, I think, is so important, that one of the biggest social purpose that any organization, any team can have is to send people home better than when they came in. I mean, every single person is going home to someone who cares for them. That difficult employee is not a difficult employee. They're a human being who's a mother, a father, a son, a brother, a daughter, a partner, someone's everything, who's behaving in ways that you perceive as difficult. And how you engage and understand that person can be the difference between whether they feel fulfilled in their life or not.
I often talk about the ripples that we can send, through our teams, through our organizations out into the world. And, whether it's family, society at large, these things absolutely do happen. If you have a terrible day at work because people were short with you and you didn't feel that significance you're teaching us about, it's hard to show up and have energy, with your kids, or when you're out in town in the line in the grocery store is longer than you think it should be. Like those things actually happen. I mean, we don't think about it often to make that connection, but it's absolutely true.
They do. It's hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't believe that they matter. And if someone doesn't, and psychologically, if someone doesn't believe that they matter in the place where they spend a third of their waking life, they can start to feel like, I don't matter. What I'm doing doesn't matter. That sense of self-worth, that sense of capability that drives everything else can really suffer. I mean, the good news, though, is that we can optimize interactions to ensure people feel significant. And in turn, we feel more significant. This is not programmatic. It's not, you don't have to add a new platform, or it's interactional. And we've missed a lot of that. Like when I look at the latest Gallup engagement report, in January, right, it's the lowest it's been in 10 years. This is despite the employee engagement services industry becoming a $1 billion industry. There's over 100 validated assessments, thousands of coaches. We've invested more in well-being programs than ever, and yet people are more disengaged than ever. And why is that? There's 2 data points. Just 39% of people said they strongly agreed that someone at work cared for them as a person, the lowest it's ever been. Just 30% said someone saw and invested in their unique potential. So this is not really a disengagement crisis. It's what I've been calling a mattering deficit. I mean, people don't feel significant in their everyday interactions, which is driving these things. And so this is interactional, which is actually good news.
It's good news because we can do something about it. And it's great news because your book teaches us exactly what to do about it. We've got 3 very specific practices. And I think that the good news here is that twofold. One is that there's such an important connection between people feeling this level of significance and all the good things that we want. We want them to stay in their jobs. We want them to contribute in their jobs, have high engagement, be all those organizational citizenship behaviors. We want all that good stuff. And so we've got the key right there. But the thing is, we have to take these practices. So you give us 3 of them, and let's take a look at them. The first one that you share with us is noticing. And I mentioned earlier, we get busier than ever all the time. And some of us are navigating our own personal challenges, whatever it might be. How do we remember, Zach, to slow down and to really pay attention to others?
Yeah, hurry and care cannot coexist. And it's easy to say we care about people. You can do it from afar. But there's a difference between caring about somebody and caring for them. To care for somebody, you have to deeply understand them. You can't take care of anything if you don't understand it. So if you have a house plant or a car you're trying to fix, you can't care for it if you don't deeply understand it, understand its nuances, understand what it's like. When we get a new piece of equipment or we get a new appliance, we have to understand it first. But yet, typically, we don't take that same time to understand the people. So if you want to care for someone, you have to understand them. And in that, to understand them, you have to notice them. And noticing is the act of seeing and hearing somebody. There's a big difference between knowing people and noticing them. You may work with a team who you've been working with for 5 years. You may know your team members, but not notice that they're suffering, not notice that they're struggling, not notice that they're feeling left out of discussions, not notice that there is potentially someone who's used to have energy for a project and they just don't have it anymore. So noticing is a deliberate act. And it typically happens because we have to make the time and space to do it.
And otherwise, it feels sometimes frivolous in some ways of saying, well, I'm supposed to just hear and get to know my people. Like, Zach, I'm trying to put up some numbers here. I'm trying to get this project delivered on time. Yeah, that's exactly what you need to do, at least with some of that time, is to, before you can care for them, like you said, get to know them.
I got to do some training with the top 200 leaders in the U.S. Army, and one of them was one of the people who does the Special Forces officer training. These are some of the most elite, talk about pressure and performance, high performance units in the world. And he came up to me after and he goes, Zach, a lot of people think that the key ingredient of a high performing unit behind enemy lines is toughness. And he said, it's not, it's love. No one is going to sacrifice for me if I don't know their kids' names. No one is going to go above and beyond for me if I don't support them when they're struggling. No one is going to support their team members if they haven't experienced that support themselves. We have to deeply know each other, deeply understand each other, to trust each other. And this is what's really important. Everything a team does is built on the foundation of trust. Trust, the research is very clear, is virtually impossible without care. Think about the last person you trusted who didn't care for you. So noticing is building that trust. It's seeing people. It's asking better questions about people instead of, hey, how's it going? Asking people, what is your attention today? What have you been thinking about the most today? Checking in on people's energy level, and then, relearning how to pay attention. Some research shows that about 15 years ago, on average, we could pay attention to one thing for about 2.5 minutes, which sounds great. But now it's about 43 seconds. One thing that I encourage people to do is to note down what you observe with people and share back what you observe, because that noting process is a way to relearn how we pay attention. And then the other thing I would say is, when you're with your team, use that time not just on what to do with one another, but on how you're being with one another. Most meetings I find are like update fests. Update, 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 right? Most meetings could be emails, literally, because they're transactional. What can't be an email is checking in how someone's parent is doing in the hospital, resolving a conflict that you had, talking about how to be better together, work on a project better, resolve a mistake someone made. And so think about how you're spending your time too. And are people feeling seen and heard? And do they have an opportunity to in those interactions?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And I think there's so much of our work life, especially in these knowledge kind of jobs that many of us have, it's very regimented in the sense that you have a 30-minute meeting, a team meeting, whatever it is. And so one of the things that I like to share is around like first 5 minutes. Can we use the first 5 minutes, whether it's a half-hour meeting, full-hour meeting? The whole rest of the time, I promise we can do worky work stuff. It's no problem. But the first 5 minutes, can we really be human with one another? Can we check in and show and see how people are doing? And it's like, if we can just get into that habit, all of a sudden now we create the space. And I think a lot of times people want to do that. They'll naturally fall into it. You time box it so people might not get a little uncomfortable, like, okay, but we have some real work things to talk about. We'll get there. Don't worry. So little things like that can really go a long way.
Yeah. And then when people see that the work things actually become better, when you know the people that you're working with, things become better. Like the difficult conversation becomes easier. The feedback you have to give becomes easier. Giving feedback, even giving critical feedback, becomes easier when you've built the relational groundwork. One of the problems with critique, for example, about 40% of performance improvement conversations decrease performance.
I believe that 100%.
Right? And why is that? Researchers have found it really comes down to one simple thing. People critique before they care. The person doesn't feel like they're understood or that the other person has their best interests at heart. So naturally, if they don't feel significant to somebody, what they say to them is not going to be significant to them. And so I always say, like, the feedback conversation begins years before the feedback conversation.
Right.
And it takes work, but it's worth it. One of my favorite practices, really quick, is there was a eye hospital in Denmark. They did a study. They had nurses at the beginning of their shifts. They would just do a green, yellow, red check-in. So green means you're in flow, you're good. Yellow means you're a little bit stressed out. It's tough to be present. Red means you're completely offline. It's tough to be there. And they would just go around at the beginning of their nurses huddles and do green, yellow, red. Where are you? The job of the leader was not to psychoanalyze them or change their color. It was just awareness. And then they measured the teams that did that with the teams that didn't over the course of 6 months. And the teams that did that check-in, just that, had higher patient satisfaction, performance, had higher engagement, lower burnout. And when the researchers asked them why, they all said some version of, we're having better conversations in our break room. And why is that? Because Matt, if you tell me you're a red and I know that as a leader, do you think that when I hop on the next call with you and I know you're a red, I'm just going to think to myself, I hope Matt figures that one out? Or am I more likely to say, hey, I noticed you're a red. Anything I can do to help? Or if you're a red, do you think I'm going to vigorously debate a project you're working on in front of everybody that day? That's probably a one-on-one thing that day. So as a leader, this is not just frivolous stuff. This is the data you need to lead, to see people.
I love also that it wasn't a command to say, well, we got to fix these reds. Stop the presses. Everybody, if we got a red on our team, hold on. Because then I was like, oh, geez, I'm never going to be red again. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. This actually, that actually comes from the military. So fast-paced environment to do a quick check on the energy levels. We often check the equipment, but we don't check the people every day.
Yeah,
in our
so
job,
true.
Right? Like, I love when the pilot at an airport puts on the vest and goes and checks the plane when I'm at the gate. And like you said, one of my clients is an airline. I ask them, who checks the pilot every day? So we have to make this a common practice where we're checking in on the energy and emotions of our people, because they're data. And here's what happens. When someone knows that you know that they're a red, they likely become a yellow.
Just automatically.
The problem is not struggle. The problem is struggle alone.
Well said. And I think it's unrealistic to think somebody's always going to be green. And so eventually when they see other people around them who are reds and yellows, on occasion at least, then maybe they'll be more likely to say, you know what, today I'm a little yellow.
Or if you're always a red, if you're worried about that and your people are always a red, someone will eventually say, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, right. Let's call timeout, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love that these are such practical things. I love that a very senior officer in the Army and Special Forces told you that love is the answer. Like, I wish I could have seen that conversation playing out for the two of you. I've felt it. It's so true. And I think that in the military, you'd be shocked, but that word is not used sort of lightly or without
No,
sort of
it's not.
abandon at all. I mean, it's very, very true. And I think that it's almost unusual when you get to the civilian world, as I did, and be like, oh, we don't talk like that. Why?
Yeah, I got the opportunity to meet the commander of the Blue Angels. You know that
Oh, yeah.
Navy demonstration group. And if you watch the documentary, they spend about 3 months living with one another every day before they start going out and doing some of these technical.
What the level of trust in that situation with what they're being asked to do acrobatically in the air, high stakes, like you can't mess around. You can't take chances. You can't have a mistake.
You can't mess around, but it actually goes back to basics. You have to know people.
How about that? And we're not asking people to shack up for 3 months before they go and work on the next project, but to do the things you're sharing
No,
with us. Like,
you actually probably have more time to do it. And this is
yeah,
not
right.
about adding more to your plate. This is actually about optimizing the interactions you already have.
Well, I think in some ways it takes me back to Lincoln with, give me time to chop down a tree, I'll sharpen the saw. This is sharpening the saw. It's basically saying, do the people stuff, because eventually when you get to the mechanical parts that every team has, it's going to go better. Like, it's an investment. It's not a diversion. It's not a distraction. It's essential. It's essential. Yeah, but I want to, I could talk to you all day, Zach, but I promise I won't. I want to move us to the next one, which talks about affirming. So one question I had for you is, when you think about affirming and recognizing someone else's contributions, what they're doing on the team, like you mentioned with the Park Service, where it was saying, hey, look what you did. Should we think about doing this? Like, does it need to be a big public display? Does everybody get CC'd on a message like that? Or is it only one-on-one? Or how do I, as a leader, decide like what level of visibility do I need to provide when I'm affirming someone's contributions?
A good question to ask everybody is, when you feel like you matter to me, what am I doing?
Oh,
Because that'll give you the best data you'll get. No survey can give you that data. When you feel like you matter to me, what am I doing? And your job is to do more of those things. So that'll be your best data to get of how people like to be affirmed. Affirmation is a little bit deeper than appreciation or recognition. And I think it's important to know the difference. Appreciation is just general gratitude for who someone is. Recognition is general gratitude for what someone does. But affirmation is the experience of showing someone how their unique gifts make a unique difference. And so it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be public. In interpersonal interactions, for example, you can simply start saying a better thank you. So instead of just saying thank you or good job, go a step further and share with people the difference they make and how they make it. So, there's 4 major components. One is to describe the setting, like when and where did it happen. So at the beginning of the meeting yesterday, that helps you not become the leader that just says thank you at 1:00 every day. You're actually noticing when it happened. The second is behavior. When you went around and checked in with people, be very specific about what that behavior was. But then third, name their gifts. So everybody brings us 4 gifts: their purpose, their strengths, their perspective, their wisdom. Say, hey, I know, when you went around and checked in, you were really attuned to the team. You really demonstrated your intentionality. And then the last is describe the impact that it had. Tell the story of the impact. And when I walked out of that meeting yesterday, I could see people, I could just tell people had a lot more energy because you did that. So thank you.
I love that. It's like making sure that you're hitting all the key components and having that little bit of it's not necessarily a template so much, but making sure that we're not just saying, hey, great job last week.
Yeah.
Okay. What
And it's
is
not
that?
and it's not that you're going to be like, hey, now we're going to do setting, behavior, right? That's not the point. We've become framework obsessed in the leadership.
Yeah, right.
It's not about that. It's just knowing that for affirmation to stick, it should be very specific. It should be gift focused. What I mean by that is you should be able to name specific, unique gifts that the person or the team actually exhibited. And then you should show them very vividly the indisputable evidence that made an impact. And that's what makes the thank you become more meaningful than just the, hey, thanks everybody for your hard work. Thank them for what they did when they did the hard work and what that hard work did for someone else.
Well, because otherwise you don't necessarily know who they are and their skills and capabilities, or you don't know what they actually did. You're so busy trying to manage up, for example, that you didn't think about what the team's actually doing. So, and I think it's really important for those of us on the call, we manage people every day. You're like, okay, how do I actually make sure that I can answer that question, pose that question? When you know that you matter to me, what am I doing? You get back 5 different answers and it's 5 different ways. Well, guess what? Yeah, you need to do 5 different ways of parroting that back. That's your job as a leader, is to individualize that sort of
Yeah.
conveyance of significance, right? So it sounds like a lot of work. Well, it is. This is the job of being a leader, right?
I know your craft is people. This is the fundamentals of being human.
Right.
The best leaders just kind of do the reps. They focus on the fundamentals. They craft their interactions to make sure people feel seen and heard and valued.
Well, and it sounds like in some of the anecdotes you've given us, they've mastered this third one as well, which is around needing. And in this section, you talk about, also what a phrase that I love, the 5 most powerful words. Can you tell us what those words are and what that phrase is, why it's so necessary, so effective?
Yeah. And again, making sure people feel that they need it is making sure they know they're not dispensable and that their work is not disposable. And when people feel replaceable, they act it. But when people feel irreplaceable, they act it. And I want everybody listening right now, just think of someone who you rely on. I mean, we all have those people on our teams. Now think about the last time you explicitly told them. And usually there's a gap. And so use these 5 words. If it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be possible. If it wasn't for you, this product wouldn't exist. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made it through this week. And just say, hey, I just wanted to share that with you. And just watch what happens. You'll see the power of mattering.
I think it's such a stark contrast to what we see sometimes in an era of AI and robotics escalation, companies sloughing off thousands of people at a time with an email. It's almost like you're being bombarded with, you don't matter. You're not significant. You're not indispensable. No one's indispensable. And here we're saying, like, at this moment in time on this team, doing the things that we're being asked to do, in fact, you are. Yeah. That what a powerful and refreshing antidote to the way that a lot of people feel who are listening right now.
And, I'm really worried actually for organizations that are doing that because, in 1913, there was this engineer who had individuals pull on a rope as hard as they could. And then he measured the force. He used a little device that measured force on how hard they were pulling the rope. And then he put them into groups and had them pull on the rope. And he added up the force readings. Well, who do you think exerted the most total force, groups or individuals? A lot of people say it was the groups. It wasn't. It was the individuals. And why is that? Because they knew that their effort was indispensable. They knew that they had to put forth the effort, that their effort was needed because it was only them. And I think this is what's going to happen in organizations that do things like mass layoffs. They, just push people aside. They treat people like numbers. When people who feel replaceable act replaceable.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a diminishing return because if you've got 10 employees, 10 ropes, people pulling the rope because like, I'm the only one who can do this. I'm probably doing a job and a half, to be honest. You get to 10,000 employees, you're like, oh, who's going to notice? Like, what? Yeah, what do they care anyway? I know what's going to happen. Or, oh, man.
And going back to the original stuff on noticing and trust, a lot of people out there are talking about efficiency right now. Efficiency this, efficiency that. There's nothing more inefficient in the long term than an employee who doesn't trust you.
100%. And, the CFO saying, I'm paying for all this capacity, all this energy of people. And, what's happening to it? Well, we know what's happening to it. We're not taking Zach's advice. That's what's happening.
Well, yeah. And a lot of people are saying to me, like the way a lot of people connect with me is they'll say, we've tried everything. We've done all the surveys. We've done everything. And nothing's been moving the needle on engagement. And one of the problems, if you really look hard enough, it's those daily interactions.
Yeah. Right. I think, and that's refreshing too, to think that it's not something grandiose, or that if I'm a manager in a larger organization, you can still have an outsized impact, locally with your group, yourself and your group, which is
absolutely,
it's incredibly empowering, I think, versus, oh, well, we have to change the culture. You're like, well, what am I supposed to do about that? There's 500 of us. Like, well, you have to change your team's culture. Oh, okay. Wait, now I'm listening, because that I can do. Actually, you have to be human with people, and you have to, have these interactions. You're like, I have interactions every day. I can make them better, and I can make a huge difference. You're like, wow, look at that.
I think that's exciting, right? Your next great leadership act could be your next interaction.
100%. And I want to bring us to this part as well. You had mentioned it a little bit earlier that if we want to feel significance too, and we all do, then helping others feel significant and like that they matter, that's a key to making that happen. And can you just close us out thinking a little bit more about that upward spiral that's possible for us if we do these things?
Yeah, I mean, really think, do you get a sense of significance telling people what to do and when to do it by?
Right.
And that's also how we spend our days. Think about the time where you most felt that you mattered. What were you doing in your work? Chances are I was mentoring somebody, listening to somebody, empowering somebody, helping someone solve a problem, putting something out into the world or into the market that made a difference. It was about mattering. And so the boomerang effect is that the more we show other people how they matter, the more actually we create the evidence that we matter around us by how they respond to us.
I've always been shocked when people from my past who I would have managed or mentored a long time ago, they continue on in their careers, which is fabulous. And they'll reach back out and say, hey, now I'm managing people. And there was a time you pulled me aside or you checked in on me. And now I did that. You're like, that's what you remember. That's what sticks with them versus we ship this product or we hit this metric of something. Not again that those things don't matter. We need profitable businesses. But it's like the mattering stuff is not the same stuff that gets the headlines in a lot of teams and organizations. And I think it's just important to recognize that.
Yeah. And I just, again, think about the best leader you've ever had. Do you remember their quarterly earnings report? Do you remember their product launch? No, you remember how they showed up.
It's so true. Well, I want to give us a little bit of a shift here. We've covered some pretty heavy stuff.
We did in a short time. This is great.
I told you, Zach, I could talk to you all day about this, but we're not going to. I want to give you a trivia question here. I saw in a podcast episode you did a long time ago. I want to tell listeners how long ago you had mentioned that early in your career you were in radio sales. You had done a radio sales job. It wasn't all that you didn't feel like you necessarily mattered, and thankfully, you changed the course of what you do, and now you're helping all of us make sure we get this stuff right. But I'm going to give us a random and ridiculous trivia question about radio. So here it comes. Which of the following inventors is widely credited with the development of the first practical wireless telegraph system, a precursor to modern radio? Is it A, Thomas Edison, B, Nikola Tesla, or C, Guglielmo Marconi? Take a guess. Oh, interesting. So A, B, and C. We got Edison, Tesla, and Marconi. The first practical wireless telegraph system.
My brain is, for some reason, gravitating towards Marconi.
Mine as well. And in fact, I live here on Cape Cod, and we have a Marconi Beach, which I think had an important radio antenna. So listeners, we're going to go with C, which is Marconi. You go ahead and lock in your answers if you're playing along at home, and we're going to get the answer right now. That is correct. Zach, you crushed it. And the answer is Marconi, indeed widely crafted with development of wireless telegraph system. Nice job. Well, I've got a much better question for you, Zach. Where can my listeners go to learn more about you, about your book, about all the great work that you're doing?
Best place to go right now is powerofmattering.com. And then you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a great, really fun LinkedIn community. We disagree, agree, dialogue about all this stuff.
All right. Well, listeners, I'm going to have those links for you in the show notes. You're only one click away from learning about the power of mattering and getting connected with Zach. Zach, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I've really, really benefited from and enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks, Matt.